All right, story 52D, Delta. 52D, part 1. There's going to be 2 parts to this. And part 2 is, I encourage you to watch it. Yes, story 52D. It's been a long day. Really didn't feel like making this tonight, but you know, you got to make hay while the sun's shining because we don't know what tomorrow may bring. So I'm going to take a crack at it tonight, see if I can get through this. Whitehall's Bigfoot, Whitehall, New York. They're Bigfoot up close and personal. I know what it is. I know more about probably what it is than anybody. And you'll see why. It's nothing I ever sought out. In fact, when I moved to this town, and when this event happened, I never even heard of it. I mean, I was brand new in that town, and there wasn't any internet. This happened in 1988. So, you know, it wasn't like I cruised the internet and found all kinds of information on this that didn't exist. And I really didn't know anybody. I'd only been in the town for, at this point, about 8 months. You know, I knew some of the guys I worked with, but I didn't really have a crowd of people I hung around with at this point in time, other than the people I went to church with. I was a training sergeant in the Whitehall Army National Guard. That was my job. I was a full-time active duty infantry training sergeant to train this, you know, local Whitehall Guard infantry company in the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains. And if you want, look up Whitehall, New York and Bigfoot and see what you come up with. I'm not the only one there's quite a bit out there on it. So, God, where do I start? That's why there's 2 parts, because a lot of this is information. Part 1, I just want to really tell my experience for the most part. And part 2, some other things. This happened over 30 years ago. All right. I wrote all this down some years ago in detail. So, and I never forgot this. So it really is pretty clear in my mind. Bigelow's constant comment. All right. So the 52 series started out how I wound up living in the woods. And I wound up living in the woods from the 1st of July to about mid-October. And I know this because when I left the woods, one of the last places I was sleeping was in a cornfield. And the corn was pretty ready to harvest. So how did I get out of the woods? Picking up where I left off, Story 52C, my first encounter with what I believe probably was Bigfoot, Whitehall's Bigfoot. Yes, I want to say they call it Bigfoot. The Indians call it Sasquatch. You know, I never really was a big believer in Bigfoot and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't think, what do you call it? You know, it had big feet. I mean, somebody that researches these things found footprints in an area where it was reported, and they took plaster casts, and they were pretty darn big feet, right? And so they call it Bigfoot. What would you call it? Well, I'm going to have in Story 52D Part 2, I've got some other names that it's been called through the years. And take for what you will. So when I first encountered it in Story 52C, I got out of there. I didn't go back there. I didn't sleep there again. You know, just a couple of weeks before that happened, when I saw that black thing in the swamp where I was staying I was there for almost 3 months, all by myself, living out in the woods by this swamp in the mountains. I had the story of the unquiet grave. That's also for Story 52B. That happened in the same place that I saw Story 52C, where I first saw what I believe was my first encounter with Bigfoot. I still stayed there. After the unquiet grave, I'm pretty sure a spirit woman communicated with me. I heard her talk, and she led me to the site that I described in 52B. I stayed there. I wasn't worried about it for three reasons. One, I've had hauntings my whole life. And as God would will it, I've been living alone for quite a few years of my life. And not every house I've lived in has been haunted, but most of them have, to one level or another. And I decided if I start running from things, when will I stop? You know what I mean? You wonder, why do people stay in a haunted house? Because it's their house. They pay their rent there. And if they're the kind of people that have these things happen in their life, you learn to make your stand, you put your faith in God, and get on with your life. Which brings me to point two. Not only did I not want to start a habit of running from spooky things where I'm living, I put my faith in God. Christian God. I believe God loved me. I believe God watches after me. And if I have to ask God to protect me, then He's going to protect me. And if I fall, it's because He let me fall. So I put my faith in God, and believing that God is the most powerful, has power over all these things, which we'll get into. This story will bear out. And point three, the third reason I didn't leave. What was it? I can't. It's been a long day. Sorry. Yeah, mainly those two reasons. Those two. I just put my faith in God, and really just made it a thing I didn't want to leave. I didn't put a lot of stock in this stuff. I wasn't going to let things scare me out of my home, even if I'm living alone in the woods with no cell phone, nobody around me for a long ways. I still didn't let that deter me. But when I saw that thing, that black thing coming at me in story 52C, I hightailed it out of there. I ran, and I was a good runner then. I was 27 then, and ran a lot. I could run 15, 17 miles, I remember, and I just turned around and came back because it got boring. I could just run and run and run. I used to run in marathons. I ran in the military. We had to run PT, so I was in good shape. But I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life to get out of there. And I got in my Jeep, and I got out of there, and I never slept there again. So I went to a cornfield. That was the next place. I had to sleep somewhere where I was going to sleep. The corn was pretty high. That's how I know it was probably mid-late fall. And I remember I stayed in the cornfield one night. I left there after one night, not because of anything paranormal, but I found that a cornfield at night, at least in a rural area, well, it would be in a rural area, man, there were raccoons and deer all over the place. That was unbelievable. You lay in there under the stars on your sleeping bag or in it, whichever, and you're just laying there at midnight looking up at the stars all by yourself. You hear the rustle of the wind through the corn, and it's really soothing, kind of rustling noise with the corn, but you also hear raccoons and deer all around you. So I stayed there one night, and then I went to stay at a guy that was in our guard unit on his land, and good guy, Townsend. And I was there for about a week, and I had a couple of really weird things happen there. One was creepy, and one was kind of enchanting. And the one that was enchanting was I was sleeping on top of my sleeping bag. I got up in the morning, the sun was coming up. I look over, and not far, about from me to where you're at right now on the camera. Picture this, if you can. 3 red fox cubs in a triangle on their hind legs with their paws like this, almost like they're dancing. I'm not making this up. And I'm like, wow, I wish I got a picture. I did have a camera back then. But three red fox cubs, they're about that big, about as big as a cat. They weren't full grown yet. And all 3 were on their hind legs, about from me to the camera when I woke up, and they were going around like that, like they were dancing in a circle with their arms up, almost like touching each other. And then they all scattered and left. So that was pretty cool. I remember that to this day. And then something creepy happened. The last night I was there, I had a dream. And in the dream, it was nighttime, and I got up and it was night. And it was where I was at in my dream. And there was a creepy old man behind a tree, and I could just see his face, and he was going, "You know you're all out here all by yourself, don't you?" And then I go follow him, and he'd go further back, and then he'd come out from behind a tree, and he'd say, "You're all alone out here, you know that, right?" You know, and he just kept doing that. I kept following him, and he just kept taunting me like that, saying, "You're all alone, you're here by yourself." And then I woke up, and I'm like, oh man. And it was nighttime still, right? So that kind of weirded me out. All right, so I'm going to get to my Bigfoot encounter. I'm sorry. How I got out of the woods. I'll just say they finally paid me. All right, I won't go into, there's a lot of drama involved, a lot of drama. And I had to actually get confrontational with somebody, which is not like me. And they said, I went down to Albany, and the guy said, "Oh, you're the guy that's out living in a tent up north in the mountains, aren't you?" He thought it was funny. I've been out there over 3 months. I had a big leather jacket in my hand, and I went wham right on his desk, and all his papers flew all over the place. And I said, "I don't even have a tent. You know, so let's get the facts straight. Yeah, I'm the guy, and I don't even have a tent. Now you're going to get me paid." And they owed me a lot of money. You know what? I got his attention, and they got me paid that week. So I moved out of the woods, and I'm getting to the Bigfoot story, all right? I know my last one, somebody commented that I digressed so much they didn't even know where the story was. But you know what? This is my story. I'm not like the other YouTube channels where I'm getting stuff off the web or other people's stories. These are my life events, and I'm going to tell them the way I tell them. This isn't monetized. I'm not making a dime off this. I'm just sharing this. And so I got in a house on Champlain Avenue in Whitehall, and I will put a map up of Champlain Avenue because I want to point out behind my place was a swamp kind of area. And we'll get more into that in Story 52D, Part 2. Here's the map of Champlain Ave, Whitehall, just a topo map. And I'll just circle the area where I lived. I'm not going to point the house out, but I know which one it was, but I don't know the liabilities on these things. So that's where I was living. And behind my house opened into a big marsh, you know, which lo and behold, I didn't know at the time because I never walked back in there. It was just swamp, but it's Mud Creek. And that whole area in Whitehall is full of bays and swamps, canals, creeks. There's a lot of water in that place, and I'll get into that more in 52D. Picture off. All right, getting into the encounter. Anybody that knows me, my children, my mom when she was alive, I lost her a few months ago to COVID. They knew me through the years, and they knew I couldn't tell this story without getting shaky. I got really traumatized by what I'm about to relate to you. And that's part of the reason I'm telling this story, because Whitehall, since I've left that town years ago, has erected a statue to Whitehall's Bigfoot, and you know, it's a protected and whatever, and it's kind of like a tourist attraction, fun thing. But I experienced this thing. And I got a different account. And I want people to know what they're dealing with here a little better. And you don't have to believe me. And I don't blame you one bit if you don't believe me. Because I don't know if I probably wouldn't believe me either. But if you're researching or you're interested in Bigfoot, I'm going to tell you what Whitehall's Bigfoot is about. I can't speak for Yeti or Sasquatch or Chewbacca or whatever, right? The other big feet, Bigfoots, whatever you want to call them, all over the world, you know, they have different names. I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you a lot about what Whitehall's Bigfoot is. Well, I was going to church 3 times a week. I want to point out my lifestyle. I was seeking God, the Christian God, with everything I had at this point in my life. I'd just gone through a divorce that I didn't want. I was estranged from my family. I didn't know anybody in the area. I'd never heard of Bigfoot or any of that stuff. I never heard of it. So I want to make that clear. Never heard of it. So I was going to church, and the church was my family. And I played classical guitar, and I smoked cigarettes, I think, off and on. And I kept a diary, and I drank maybe 2 beers. I didn't do any drugs. I was an active duty career soldier. I didn't do drugs anyway, so other than beer, coffee, and I hate to say it, I think tobacco off and on. I used cigarettes, but oh man. So a typical night for me I'd play guitar. I was working on classical guitar pieces by myself. I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have any friends. Nobody came over to visit me. I was 27 years old still. A lot different looking than I am now, but that's how it goes. And then I'd go to bed. I'd drink a beer, maybe a beer, a quart of beer. That's like 2 beers. I'm not drunk in any way. And I went to bed, and here's where the Bigfoot encounter comes in, okay? You've waited for it. But I'm sorry, it's just the way I tell a story. Because people are going to wonder, what was I on drugs or what was going on in my life, So I was in bed sleeping, and soundly, and I didn't have any issues or anything going on. I don't recall, I wasn't dreaming anything. This is difficult to tell this. And I woke up late. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning. I would find out after this event. And I was laying on my back with a pillow under my head. And tears were streaming out of both of my eyes. I was weeping, weeping. I'm not going to, but tears were just flowing. Unnatural. Because my pillow was soaking wet. And I was weeping, and tears were just flowing down the side of my face, soaking my pillow, and I couldn't move. And I felt this awful, awful dread. And here's the part that's hard to tell. I was doing things with my hands to myself that were vicious and humiliating. I believe vicious and very vicious and humiliating. I think meant to humiliate, I don't know what. I was weeping, and I was wondering, what's going on? Why am I doing this? I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop my hands and hitting myself and doing things to myself that were just, I think, meant to humiliate me. I couldn't tell you, but very vicious, mechanical. And I was terrified, and I felt possessed, and I was possessed because I couldn't move, and I was being forced to do things against my will, and I felt this immense dread. It's hard to say, a dread. Not like I felt like my life was in danger. It's just like something very, very, very terrible was very close to me. And when it had me doing this, it didn't possess my mind. I want to make that clear, or my soul, but it did possess my body. It did possess my body. When it did this, during this time, I got a sense of where it came from. I got a little sense of where it came from. And it came from a dark place, very dark. And by I say dark, I got the feeling of an underworld, and that it could cross over between the underworld and our world. And when I say dark, I mean dark, the light of God isn't there. There's no light of God. Darkness and anger. Just a dark place, like with caverns. Just dark underworld place. And that it traveled through that. And while I'm getting this sense of where it's coming from, and tears are just flowing, soaking my pillows and underneath my head, and I'm going through these motions with my hands and arms. Next thing I know, downstairs, my back door slammed open. Bang! Bang! Real loud, forceful. And that's when I came out of it, you know? My dog doesn't like it when I'm talking. I came out of it, and then I could hear, I'm like, oh my God. And then I could hear footsteps, all right? And they were very, very slow, but real heavy, like mechanical. Not like, you know, somebody walking. It's like, poof, poof. I think I'm scaring my dog. Hey, buddy, it's just me. Come on, it's just me. I'm telling a story. I'll give you a snack after this. Bang. Bang. And I'm laying there listening to this. I'm like, oh my God, somebody's in my house. I wasn't thinking ghosts or anything at this point. I thought maybe somebody on drugs, maybe a thief. I don't know. But it didn't sound good. And I'm listening to this, and I'll tell you the layout of my place that opened up into my kitchen, a small kitchen, in my back. The backyard was a grass and a swamp that I never went into, a vast swampy area. I never saw a satellite image of it either. Back then it didn't exist. They weren't, not for us anyway. So I could hear it come through my kitchen, and I could hear my kitchen furniture. This is important. I could hear kitchen chairs get thrown. You know, my furniture in my kitchen being thrown around. And I'm still laying on my back, and now I hear it. Poof, poof. It's coming through my living room. And once it gets through my living room, it's just a spiral flight of stairs that comes up into my bedroom and a bathroom. That's it. So I heard it come into my living room, bang, bang. And then I hear my coffee table in my living room go flying, right? Get knocked over, sound like it got thrown. And I thought, oh shit. And I had a baseball bat underneath my bed. And I grabbed the bat and I came up with a plan. The flight of stairs were in front of me a ways. And I was going to get in front of the stairs with a ball bat and wait. And as soon as they came up to the top of the stairs, I was going to whack them in the shins. That would put them down. And then I was going to follow up a couple times. Nothing lethal, but enough to incapacitate them, hopefully. That was the plan. I was going to hide there and just come out whack, you know, boom, boom, you know. I didn't get that far because when it got to the stairs, there was no more boom. Boom, puppy, come on, chill out. I'm scaring my dog. Come on. I got to get through the story. Boom, boom. There was no more of that because when I got ready to get in position at the stairs, I saw it. And it wasn't walking at this point. It floated up. It was floated, just floated up. It came up. If I'm standing here at the top, I could see it come up and just float up and round the spiral. And as soon as I saw it, I just stood, I couldn't move. I stood there like this. I couldn't move. And it came right up and it stopped right in front of me, about this far away from me. And I stand 6 foot tall, so this thing stood about 6'3" or 6'4". Like the title page, a really rough, crude art. It was now my place was lit up because on Champlain Ave there's street lights, and I had a street light right in front of my place, so it was almost annoying. My place was always lit up pretty well inside. All right, I remember that, so I could see it pretty clearly, you know. And it was just a giant black hulking figure, shadow, just black. I didn't see any features, just a giant black. If it was a human, I would say it was somebody in shape that stood 6'3", 6'4", weighed maybe 300 pounds. But the only two things it had were glowing red eyes, almond shaped. They were almond shaped, glowing red eyes. And it smelled bad. I recall that. Eggy, whatever, I don't know. It stopped right about this close in front of me. Eyes looking right into my eyes. And I was froze. I couldn't move. And I had the ball bat, you know, hanging on to one hand. And I thought it had to have been, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And I'm standing there, and I couldn't believe this was happening. I was terrified. terrified. And I thought, this has to be a dream. This has to be a dream. This has to be a dream. It has to be a dream. It has to be a dream. And I could move my face, my lips, my eyes, and I could move my fingers. But I had the ball bat, and I'm standing there, and I pinched myself really hard as I could and closed my eyes and said, this is a dream, this is a dream. And I pinched real hard, and I opened my eyes, and it's still right there in front of me. And I got the impression, I never felt that I was mortally in danger. I never felt that it was going to hurt me. I think it just fed off my fear. I think it got a kick out of how frightened I was. I think it got a kick out of what it made me do when it possessed my body. I don't think it liked me. I don't think it was ever human. I'll get into that in 52D, part 2. And here's where this story, all right, I stood there for about, probably 25, 30 seconds in front of this thing, and I started screaming. I hate to say it. I started yelling. I mean, and it didn't matter. It didn't go away. Pinching myself, going like this, it didn't go away. I was wide awake, but held in some kind of a grip. And I'll get into that in 52D part 2, because there's an account of somebody else that had the same, didn't come up to them like that, but it paralyzed them, one other person. It's another story. There are a few other people that have encountered this through the years, but not like this, not like I did. If they have, they never came forward to talk about it like I am. This is what happened. Yelling, pinching myself, all that, it didn't matter. I yelled out, Jesus, help me, Jesus. Jesus Christ, help me. And it vanished. It was gone. It called out for Jesus. I'll get through this. So I went to my bed and I knelt and said some prayers, and I felt really traumatized. It's hard to even bring it up. It's crazy as it sounds. I was exhausted. I fell back to sleep. I got up in the morning. I had to go to work. I could walk to work. And I remember I had to get in my Army uniform and shave back then. I looked good shaven back then. Now I got to grow a beard to whatever. I'm trying to snap out of this emotional moment I had. I thought, oh my God. I felt beat up. I felt traumatized. I felt like I got hit by a truck emotionally. I'm like, what the hell was that last night? I thought it must have been some kind of a crazy dream. Some kind of a crazy, wild, waking dream. So I went in the bathroom, shaved, got my uniform on, boots, went downstairs to get a cup of coffee, something to eat, and my furniture was thrown all over the place. Coffee table, just like I heard it, thrown halfway across the living room. Kitchen chairs thrown. I got to get my dog something calm. I think I scared him. Hold on a second. Hey, you want a snack? I'm sorry, pal. I know it's a spooky story. Yeah, he's going to start carrying on if I don't. It's just his way of getting a snack. He knows how to play me. Oh, my God. So I sat down on a couch, and I said, oh, my God, it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a dream. My back door was wide open in the kitchen. It was cold out, it wasn't quite spring yet, as I recall. And my kitchen chairs were thrown around, just like my table in the living room, coffee table was tossed. And I realized it wasn't a dream. And I felt pretty shook up at that point, knowing that I've been assaulted by some paranormal something. And, I went to work. And at work, there was a few guys that worked there full-time. Other than there was full-time staff, there was supply sergeant, admin clerk, and a training sergeant. That was me. And there was a couple of 2 or 3 guys that worked. They had state jobs to take care of that beautiful old building and the grounds, the armory in Whitehall. They're no longer a guard unit there, but and we all sat around like people do, get to work, and we all sat around and played cards and had a cup of coffee and some laughs. Then we got up, finished our coffee, and we all went off and went to work. It's kind of our morning time to get together and joke around and stuff. No cell phones back then. You know how people fellowshipped more before cell phones. Well, I came up the stairs of the armory, and they saw me. One of the guys saw me. My buddy Rod saw me. And he says, "Hey, Shank." And I said, "I've had a rough night." And I went, he says, "What's wrong?" I guess I really showed. And I said, "Well, I had a rough night. I'm just going to go to my office and work." And he wouldn't let it go because he liked a good story, apparently. And he said to the guys, "Hey, something's wrong with Shank. Something happened to him." And, yeah, something happened to him. And he went into where I worked, my office. He said, "What happened? Tell me what happened." I said, "I can't talk about it." He kept pressing me, and you know what? I told him my story, thinking he's going to think I'm on drugs. But this guy, unlike me, has lived in that area, just like the rest of them, for years. Some of them for many years. Some of those guys were in their 50s, state workers. And he said, "Oh," he says, "you saw Bigfoot." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I'm thinking he's nuts at this point. I never even heard of Bigfoot at this point in time, let alone Whitehall's Bigfoot. He says, "You saw Bigfoot." He says, "Welcome to Whitehall." And he called the other guys in. "Hey, come here. I said, no, don't tell him." He says, No. They're all there. They want the story. Tell them what you told them. I told them the story that I told you. And they all looked at me and they said, "Welcome to Whitehall." And they had a good laugh and said, "Welcome to Whitehall. You saw Bigfoot." And, well, I didn't feel so bad. I didn't feel like I was crazy. I was wondering what was going on with these people. The whole thing was kind of intriguing. Though I was still pretty shook up about it all. And I would be for years. And there's more to this story. And that's going to be for 52D Part 2. There's more to this story. And I want to put that out. But I told this story, and it wasn't easy to tell. As you could tell when I called out to Jesus for help. And Jesus said he'd give us authority over these things. He said that. He said, "I give you authority over all these things." And I believe that, and it's truth. So we'll get into that more of this. I think that's about all for now. And I'll put up some of the verses I was talking about. I've long asked God why he allowed this to happen to me. Because I was seeking God with everything. This time period in my life in Whitehall, I had a lot of things happen to me. I've had ghost stories. I had a ghost story happen to me just a week or two ago. But I had things happen to me there that were kind of on a different level. And I think it's because I, for one time in my life, was seeking God, Christ, and the Holy Spirit with everything I had. Everything. Humanly possible. Trying to get as close as I could to God and live right. And I always thought maybe that made me kind of a high priority target for the enemy. I don't know. I think a lot of these things have to do with location. I never saw that thing again, I'll tell you that much. Thank God. Hope I never do. I drew the cover art for this, where I drew this kind of, I drew it with my computer, so it's kind of rough, but that's kind of what it looked like. Just a big black figure with glowing red eyes. And the eyes glowed. I want to say the glow of the eyes looked like, because the eyes were right in front of me, about this far away. All right? And it held me transfixed in its eyes. They looked all like a reddish orange, like if you built a bonfire and all the wood's just about burned out, that real hot red, yellow, orange part of the coals, That's what the eye color looked like. And just so they were almond shaped too. And so I couldn't really get that color right on the cover of this, but yeah, they look like a fire's ember glow of orange, but really hot, red, orange, yellow. I don't know, whatever. Was there something else? No, I just wanted to put this out there because when I see them treating this like a Disney attraction, I'm like a little, not put off, but like, oh my God, they're giving this thing credit. I mean, no, to each their own. They don't know. They don't know. I will tell you this. It was powerful. It was more powerful than me. I don't think they're ever going to find it unless it wants to be found. If they do find it, they will probably wish they hadn't. I think it travels between the underworld somehow or dimensional, I don't know what. You know, trying to describe things that really don't exist in our plane of living. But it can travel from one realm to our realm, like an amphibian almost. But it's not good. It's not anything good. It's nothing good. Not like Chewbacca on Star Wars or anything like that. So, not like the Sasquatch you see on where they're trying to sell bubble gum or beef jerky, where it looks like it probably big, stinky, he's got a little bit of character. It's not like that. I think it's evil. At some level, I'm not sure if I'd call it demonic, but it definitely isn't good. I think it's what the Bible calls a principality, a force. I think there's all kinds of things that we don't see in our school textbooks or, nature. So, but it's powerful. More powerful than me. How intelligent is it? I didn't get that. I didn't get the thoughts, but I'm pretty sure, I don't think you're going to outthink it. You're definitely not going to capture it or anything. So you might encounter it. I don't know. I got a lot more to say about this in 52D Part 2, a lot more. Some events and things. So that's the end of this. All right. Sorry I got a little emotional. I got to tell, I was a first responder at 9/11, the World Trade Center. And it's the 20th anniversary coming up. I'm going to get into that. And I might get a little emotional during that too. That was traumatic for me as well. A couple of things I witnessed there firsthand. I couldn't talk about until recently without getting choked up. So that's life. Thank you and God bless. Story 52D Part 2. Won't be that long of a wait for it. I've already put together all the material for it. Just have to assemble it. Thank you.